Thank you for listening to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast, available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Stitcher. Also, please follow Matt's Movie Reviews on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Reddit, Instagram, and MeWe. And of course, be sure to visit mattsmoviereviews.net for the latest reviews, top 10 lists, and more. Now, on to the show.
To celebrate, sincerely, Cecilia reaching 200,000 followers. Ooh, wow. I'm giving all of my friends 50% off my new bespoke non-allergenic therapy robes.
You needed this to brand. The world needs more people like you.
Sissy? Oh my God, it's you. It's been like 12 years? You remember me, right? Yeah.
I just can't picture myself without her.
I was thinking about you the other day, and now here you are. You should come to my hens weekend. Die.
So what's your thing? Are you like a model?
No, definitely not.
She's an influencer.
An influencer?
Well, I'm more like a mental health advocate.
I'm sorry, but I can't help but find it all a little bit ironic. Once upon a time, she lost her mind and she tried to murder me. Of all people, Sissy is preaching mental health.
Cecilia.
What are you, rebranding?
When we form a circle around ourselves, we are reminded that we carry with us an invisible boundary. No one enters but us. It's our very own safe space. And we never, ever have to leave it.
Hey, friends. Cecilia is not as sincere as you think she is.
I am loved. I am special. I am enough.
It's supposed to be me and Emma. That was supposed to be us. Stop the car.
I am doing my best.
Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 535. Out now on Shudder is Sissy, a psychological horror comedy that stars Aisha Dee as Cecilia, a popular wellness influencer who is unexpectedly invited to her childhood best friend's bachelorette weekend. When Cecilia comes face to face with her school bully, a long buried dark incident from the past is unearthed, leading to a craving for revenge. Blending social satire and slasher movie tropes with striking visuals and a commanding lead performance from Aisha Dee, Sissy also marks the latest film from directors Barlow and Kane Senes. I'm glad to say join me now on the podcast. Hannah and Kane, thank you so very much for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's good to be here with you, Matt. Thank you.
So Hannah, it's really interesting just listening up at different interviews you guys have done over the last year or so of promoting the film and talking about the film, how much you guys both wanted to kind of delve into the kind of whole aspect of influencer culture. Who are these people? Why do people follow them? What is happening in their own lives that maybe have led them down their own path, etc. And it's really interesting how as a certain case study that you had was that of Bill Gibson, who, for those who don't know, back in I think it was like 2015, 2016, she was a very popular wellness influencer and blogger. I guess was more blogger at that time, wasn't it? And she faked having cancer to kind of like get more sponsorships and followers, etc. And it's quite a big scandal here in Australia when that happened. What was about her as an influencer, as a case study that really kind of spoke to you and Kane in regards to, wanting to dive into the whole influencer culture aspect of the film and write a story about that?
I think the 60 Minutes interview where she's wearing a pink turtleneck sweater to hide her blushing when she's lying was really fascinating, and just kind of seeing how she circumvented every question and maintained a really strong victimhood was obviously fascinating for us all to watch at the time. But I think she also her partnership with Apple, releasing the first wellness app in the whole world, was a major deal. Like, she was on the, the global stage when all of this was going down. And then just listening to her sort of trajectory after the sort of takedown from the Australian media, where she's landed today, like in some cult or some religious sect in some other country, is really fascinating. She's reinventing herself there. And it just kind of led to this conversation about like how we not only present ourselves online, but how we proselytize and pedestal other people that we don't know, who aren't necessarily qualified, just because of, real concerns in our generation, like a lack of connection, mental health, lack of community. We've lost some really wholesome connective tissue in our ways of dealing with each other in relationships and communicating with each other. And that allows these kind of like really creepy individuals to emerge through the cracks and basically con us online. And that's always going to be really interesting. Yeah. So we were just kind of responding to that. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
We were responding to, Belle, but also just, basically our generation's toxic relationship with social media and our dopamine dependency, and wondering where that's going to go for us.
And we did a whole kind of like horror aspect of it, kind of that whole kind of slasher aspect of it kind of come into the equation. Was it always intention to kind of delve into genre with this movie? Is that something that comes across kind of organically as you're putting the screenplay together?
No, it definitely was intentional to make something that was in the horror space. I think we didn't realize going in necessarily how much of it would be comedic, how much of it would be horror. We love a lot of horror films. We love the genre. It's very unique. It's unlike anything else. But I don't think we ever went into it necessarily planning to make strictly a horror film. There's lots of little parts of things that we were into at the time and are still into now. Like we were into slasher films. That seemed like a kind of fun way to amp up the satire of having a social media influencer who, I don't want to say too much in case anyone listening to this hasn't seen the movie, but it definitely started with satire, and then the slasher element felt like it really fed into that, because you can have a lot of fun with the kill scenes, and the kill scenes, which, can be sequences as well, how these characters essentially are dispatched in slasher films in a way that kind of mirrors the satire that we're discussing with social media, with the idea of influencer culture, with the idea of kind of, validation culture and kind of dopamine culture and all that kind of stuff that ties into social media satire. Just felt like it needed to go there. So, I don't know if we ever sat there saying like, let's write a slasher, but I think it very quickly kind of just felt like the right approach. It's not supernatural, obviously. It's really a psychological thriller that
also camp.
But camp, and that we just decided to, as we were writing, I think, as we were writing those kill sequences, we just kept pushing ourselves to say, well, how messed up can this get? Like how far can we turn the dial up? So, if a head gets crushed, it's not necessarily something we went into saying, let's make a movie where everyone's head gets crushed, but it's, you write those scenes and then suddenly you're going, let's take it further. Let's really lean into the slasher and the horror elements, because in the setup of the film, it really feels like a comedy. It feels like a kind of coming of age movie. It feels like a hangout movie. It's a road movie. So I guess the idea was that a movie that starts out that way, you don't expect it to necessarily become as gory as it does. And that I think was the fun of the writing, that we just kept pushing, I think, the limits of where we wanted to take those genre elements.
And I want to ask about Aisha Dee in the role of Cecilia. To me, that role is a real kind of tightrope role because you need to get that. She as an actress has to get that perfect balance right. Because on one end, the character is incredibly sympathetic towards her, but on the other end, there are things happening in the movie, and I don't want to give away things either. That kind of makes that sympathy very hard to sustain itself throughout the movie. But again, you're kind of pulling for her, you're going against her. It's like it's such a delicate balance there. And Aisha, I think Aisha just did a fantastic job in getting that balance right. What was it like getting her in the role? Was that she someone that you guys always had on your radar to work with? And watching her do what she does with the script, what was that like working with her?
Aisha is a consummate professional, but also just really interesting to work with, not only as a fellow actor, but as a co-director. Aisha's process is very much, she likes to lead. She has a very strong internal sense of direction as well. And she would say, I remember in prep, we were kind of doing like exercises, talking, having lots of discussions about the character. What are ways that you can kind of embody yourself in the skin of Cecilia while you're stuck in quarantine? Because she was stuck in quarantine for 2 weeks right before she got on set. And pretty much after that wrapped up, we kind of realized that Aisha likes to figure out her performance almost in a spontaneous way, but that is also combined with a very clear sense of character. Like, she knew exactly how to play Cecilia. And sometimes, she would say on set, I actually want to play, I know we've written this scene as like a serious horror scene, but I think I want to add a little more comedy into it and a little more flair to it. And I think that Cecilia would actually laugh in this moment, or she would kind of be really timid and as opposed to violent. Like, she really defended her character, which is what I think all really wonderful, strong actors do. She didn't see Cecilia as a villain. She saw Cecilia as the hero of the story. And she was right. Like, all stories are transformation stories, and Cecilia's story, her transformation might be a twisted arc, but it is a story about a character becoming empowered. And Aisha brought all of that intelligence to the role, and then a lot of spontaneity and fun on set. And she also delivered that performance in, I think, like maximum 4 takes. Most of the takes that she did were 2 takes. So it was a real treat to work with her, and I learned a lot from her. I'm not sure about you, Kane.
Well, I mean, she was always someone that we were looking at because, we wanted to work with Australian actors that, that could be recognizable in some way overseas. And obviously she was on the Bold Type for a few years, which was very popular over there and is quite popular here too. So, but it's not necessarily something where we knew she was the right person for this role. We just had her kind of in our mind, and it was actually we went to her for another role originally, and she actually asked if she could talk to us about playing Cecilia. And from that Zoom chat on, it, like, she just blew us away. Like, she completely got what we wanted to do, and she basically just said, I am Cecilia. Like, I don't say that about every script I read, but with this role, I just really feel connected to this character. And she really was. And so I think it was just one of those times where you get really lucky that she took that chance to ask us if she could play the lead. We heard her out, and it was, we just connected immediately. And so from that point on, it was pretty fun and smooth sailing in a way, because we were all on the same page.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you love. The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon, the world's leading online store Amazon is your first stop to buy a wide range of products at competitive prices with fast delivery times. Amazon is also a world-class entertainment hub that includes Prime Video, Audible, Twitch, Amazon Music, and more. Sign up with Amazon today and experience the best in online shopping and entertainment. Please support Matt's movie reviews on Patreon. Get access to exclusive content, request movie reviews and top 10 lists, and help support my work. Please click on the Patreon link in the description below. And I want to ask you about the psychology of these characters, especially this group of people that Cecilia is kind of like in the outlier of. You play one of them. You play Emma, who's Cecilia's childhood friend. You have Emily D. Margheriti. She plays Alex. She's kind of like the bully. And then you have other terrific actors too. And you were saying before about how we're living in a time right now of really kind of toxic, kind of like there's a toxic element in the air now, especially in regards to connectivity and stuff and such. And I found the characters in this group, with the exception of your character Emma, a lot of them to be really have that kind of toxicity like within them, and they project that there's a sort of like a veneer of niceness to them, but then it doesn't take long for that to kind of turn to a real kind of ugliness as well, which maybe is kind of like something that they learn online. But then again, those type of cliquey kind of things have been around for a long time, right? But when it comes to the psychology of those characters in regards to the social media landscape and influencer landscape, did you find any type of correlations between the two? Does one feed off to the other? I mean, does the nasty habits online and social media come from human nature, or is human nature being transformed from the nasty habits online? It's a really interesting kind of debate between the two.
I think that's a really interesting question that literally no one has asked us. So thanks for that question. But I think that, I think that social media reveals the worst aspects of our personalities. And also when there's not eye-to-eye contact and we're not dealing with a human being, we kind of get to be these trolls if we choose to be online. And that has obviously significantly contributed to the increase in suicide rates worldwide, not just for adults, but specifically for children, which is really scary. But in terms of writing, like the addressing the psychosis of the group and that pack herd mentality, I'm not sure that we intentionally reflected the comment section of like an Instagram post, but a couple of people have pointed out that it feels like that, which I find really interesting, because I'm wondering when we were writing, what were we responding to, like in our own lives, that made it onto the page and then onto the screen via our actors. I do think we are responding to bitchy millennial, girl group politics that kind of stem from films like Mean Girls and originally Heathers. But I think that the group does really resemble the comment section and the way that people can just unleash on each other online, which leads to all things like cancellations, people being institutionalized, blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
Kane, I want to talk about some of the kind of like visual things that I picked up and watched in the film. I think something that a lot of people know now about social media is that when it comes to reacting to likes and watching, different shorts, etc., there's that kind of dopamine rush that comes with that stuff, right? Especially like if you are a content creator, getting positive feedback and more clicks and more likes and more follows. It's very much an addiction. It's like a drug, and how Cecilia kind of like reacts to that in the film is shown visually in a very kind of interesting way in the film. All of a sudden her world becomes brighter. There's like stars in the sky. There's all sorts of things going on. When it came to that aspect of the psychology of that character and the psychology of that part of social media influencer life, how much do you guys kind of like delve into the science behind social media behavior when it comes to how we kind of react to this kind of stuff? And when you decide to, and when you want to project that on screen? Was it always your intention to like to mess around with color, to mess around with visual, to kind of like to portray what's happening with Cecilia, like within her psyche as she's getting all these kind of like proclamations of like what's the word I'm looking for, of positivity from her followers who are in any case strangers, but the closest things that she has to friends in the whole entire world.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just character, right? Like, it's the same with any film. You look at your lead character, and especially in a kind of film like ours, I think, which is a point of view story. It's not really like, yes, there's a group of friends and it's somewhat of an ensemble, but it's, you know, it's her story. It's named after her. So like, she's Sissy. So you really got to put the audience in the shoes of the character, and all the decisions kind of come from that, you know, like when she's using, when she's checking her account and she sees all the kind of validations that she's getting from her followers, she gets a dopamine hit, right? So that's where a lot of the ideas came from, to kind of show the eyeball expanding, you know, things like the world getting brighter, you know, hair standing up in her arms. I mean, it's just really things where we just go, how do we show in the simplest, fastest, most efficient way what's happening to her brain, and also, like, in terms of the science, I wouldn't say we got, you know, like, yes, we did our research and stuff, and it was just we were learning about a lot of this stuff as we were writing it, so it was interesting to us, but it's not rocket science to kind of know that we get these dopamine spikes, right? When we get likes, or when someone says that we're the best and all this stuff. And what we wanted to just kind of show was the danger of slipping into that dependency or that addiction, because it's a drug like any other. And I think, like, we were very inspired, I remember at one point, by Requiem for a Dream, and how Aronofsky uses that kind of pop montage technique in that film, which, you know, is a film about addiction. And we were kind of going, well, this is a film about addiction. It's not obviously a film about addiction, because it's not obviously a drug to most people, but it is an epidemic. Like, we are all hooked on this drug, and it's legal, and no one's really doing anything about it, because it hasn't been around long enough. It's kind of like when it was legal to have certain drugs, like they used to administer you cocaine when you went to the dentist. Like society goes through shifts, and right now we're still in this shift where there's this kind of very dangerous drug, I think, that is very legal, and, you know, things might change in time, but right now that's what we're commenting on, and we're just kind of showing this one particular character as she's grappling with this, and she's using it as a dependency to hide from this trauma that happened to her in her past. She's not really dealing with it like the way you should if you want to get over something. She's just pacifying it. It's just a giant Band-Aid. And so for us, all the decisions were just about that, and about trying to show what her loneliness looks like, and how much she wants to fit in with a group of people. And then once she thinks she's in with that group of people, what does that look like? And then when things start to go wrong, what does that look like? How does she feel? Like, her anxiety is obviously, you know, increasing here. And so in that second half of the film, we really just tried to kind of ratchet up, I guess, the filmmaking to kind of match her sense of anxiety. I mean, it's driven from character, I think, more than necessarily anything in like a textbook, so to speak.
Final question. So Hannah, it's the timing of all of this is really interesting in that. So as you're filming Sissy, we all go in lockdown, right? You guys have filmed this like during COVID and quarantine and such, and we're all online. We become online creatures more than ever before, right? Physical connections with people have been severed. You know, we're all online, and that's really kind of like, it was kind of like the mental health kind of wellness influencer gold mine right there, right? That's when all of these kind of people online were like just making a killing, right, so to speak. And so when the movie comes out, when Sissy comes out, and you guys are doing the festival stuff, all the lockdown stuff is coming down, and everyone's kind of like lost in this fog of like post-COVID kind of like, you know, thing where we're kind of clearing our eyes, clearing the cobwebs, right? And then this movie comes out, and I'm just really curious, when you're showing this film at the different festivals around the world and such, and they're watching this movie post all this stuff that's going on, what type of reactions are you getting from audience members while watching this film? Because I imagine for some people there might have been almost kind of like cathartic kind of like thing going on where you're watching what's happening on screen in this movie, and maybe in some certain point, and not to say that people are going to go to the extremes that some of these characters go to, but there's almost some sort of in movies tend to do this. They take on kind of like the fears and trepidations that we have in it when they're projected on the screen as a certain side of kind of like a relation or kind of like a exercising of demons, so to speak, while you're watching this film.
Yeah, I think our timing mental health advocate couldn't have been better. Like, we couldn't have predicted that we were going into a pandemic when we wrote the script, and that, you know, social media would even do a major gear shift to Gen Z through TikTok. So that was because we have a lot of video format in our film, vertical video format. So that was a total, you know, guess in the way that we even shot during production. But yeah, taking the film around the world, you know, it was really fun. It was kind of a little punk rock. Like, it was fun hearing people cackle and scream and, yeah, just be able to express themselves in this communal way so closely after the world got out of lockdown. Like, South by Southwest 2022 was like really soon after we were all allowed to get on planes and go to other countries. And it was a very exciting vibe to be a part of. And we as audience members, looking at all the other films that got made in our cohort, felt the same way. It felt like, oh my God, we almost lost the cinema, and now we have it back again. And we got to experience some of the magic that maybe filmmakers in like the 90s got to experience, because people wanted to be out and about. So, and then, you know, the film is reflecting on the themes that we've been exploring in our personal lives globally. So, but making fun of it all by popping eyeballs out of heads and things, being silly.
And I'll just add to that. I think the biggest takeaway in regards to what you were talking about, Matt, was just how many people would come up to us and say, we love Cecilia, like, we really root for her, she's our favorite character. Like, they never really even kind of compromised a little bit and said, well, you know, some things happen that maybe I don't agree with. Like, it was just 100% kind of devotion to her as a character. And maybe that has something to do with, like, what you were saying about feeling like you're isolated during COVID and alone and no one to talk to, and just so desperately wanting connection. And I think they obviously saw that in her, and I think that buys you a lot of like leeway with the character, I guess, if you can get on board with that character straight away. And if she takes you some places that you don't necessarily expect her to go, but if that bond is already made, then you'll go off that ledge with that character and kind of follow her all the way. And I think, you know, sure, maybe some of the violence is cathartic. I think that really is, you know, what violence in film should be about, as opposed to condoning it. It's about the catharsis, like what it represents, not what it literalizes. You know, if you look at the whole film as kind of like a fever dream, it's Cecilia's fever dream, and I guess you could say it's a fever dream of someone who's just gotten out of a couple of years of COVID, even though it's not a COVID movie. It kind of became one accidentally.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really interesting kind of point what you make.
Yeah, great point.
So for everyone out there listening, Sissy, available now on Shudder. I really recommend people check out this film. It's an incredibly unique movie, in not only in the way that it tackles its themes, the way that it's made, the visuals. And again, I got to say, Aisha Dee is just fantastic in the lead role, Cecilia. And to you both, Hannah, Kane, I thank you so very much for your time today. Congratulations with the film. I can't wait to see what you guys do next, because, you know, this is, I think, it's such an incredible movie. I remember, and I know last year you guys got a bunch of accolades, rewards. A whole bunch of people were saying it was Sissy was like one of the best horror movies of the year and such. And it's something I got to really concur, because I absolutely love watching this film. And congratulations to you both. And thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Matt. That's really lovely.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content. Also, if you would like to request a review and support my work, please join my Patreon via the link in the description below.